Total War Warhammer 40K had a massive live stream today. It was called the Alpha Strike, and it took a look at the ranged combat. Now the live stream was over an hour long, and there is absolutely huge amounts of information that we can talk about. Now I did think about putting it all together in one massive video, but to be honest, it just would be taking ages, and I figured it might be better just to break it down into bite-sized videos revolving around the key topics. I'm hoping to cover things like the strategic reserve system, the new cover systems, the artificial intelligence in Total War Warhammer 40K, new battlefield mechanics, things like strafing, sentry modes, suppression, the unit card system, and other bits and bobs. But with that in mind, today I really wanted to talk about projectiles, especially seeing as this was a focus on ranged combat. Now as you can imagine, everyone will have noticed the explosions in the gameplay showcase, the Death Strike missile, orbital bombardments, the towering Stompa, and they of course would have naturally stole the spotlight. But I think actually one of the biggest technical reveal that happened quietly in the background was the fact that Creative Assembly confirmed that every projectile you see during a battle is actually simulated. And the more they explained how that system works, the more obvious it became that this isn't just a visual upgrade. It is not just all smokes and mirrors, they've effectively rebuilt ranged combat from the ground up. Every guardsman, every space marine, and every orc is firing physical projectiles that exist within the simulation, and those rounds don't just simply travel from the barrel to the target just because an animation says it should. They actually have travel time, they can miss completely, they can collide with terrain and buildings, and they are being managed by an engine that was specifically upgraded to cope with the sheer volume of gunfire that Warhammer 40K demands. Now that might not sound particularly revolutionary at first, but it's worth remembering the problem Creative Assembly had to solve. Previous Total War games certainly did feature missile units, artillery, and ranged combat, but let's face it, most battles really did revolve around melee. Units would exchange arrows or bullets for a short time before crashing into each other, which naturally limited the number of projectiles that the engine needed to process at once. Warhammer 40K though is completely the opposite. Almost every squad on the battlefield carries some kind of firearm, meaning entire armies can spend most of a battle exchanging sustained fire instead of engaging in close combat. According to the developers, supporting that style of warfare meant significantly upgrading the engine because there could be hundreds or even thousands of projectiles flying around simultaneously, all of which are interacting with the environment independently rather than existing as a simple visual effect. Now that's actually also where this system separates itself from a lot of other strategy games. In many games, the result of an attack is calculated the moment a unit fires. The tracer round you see crossing the battlefield is often just really there to make the attack look convincing because the game has already decided whether it's going to hit. Creative Assembly though made it clear that this is not what's happening here. Every bolt round, last gun shot, and shell physically travels across the battlefield, meaning it can strike walls, buildings, vehicles, or infantry depending on what happens between the shooter and the target. Misses aren't just simply hidden percentages happening behind the scenes either, because rounds can genuinely fail to connect when they don't hit their intended target. It's a much more simulation-driven approach than we've traditionally seen from Total War, and it's one of the reasons the firefights already look noticeably different from previous entries in the series. Now it seems the Orc Stormboyz are probably the best example of the philosophy behind this entire system, because during the livestream the developers actually joked that the Stormboyz themselves effectively become projectiles. When one launches into battle using its jump pack, it isn't simply following a scripted animation that ignores the rest of the battlefield. If something goes wrong, that orc can collide with scenery, smash into structures, or even crash into other units. It's a funny example, but it perfectly illustrates how the team is approaching the simulation as a whole. If something is traveling across the battlefield, whether it's a bullet, a missile, or an orc strapped to a rocket, they want it to physically exist inside the game world rather than simply being a cosmetic effect layered over hidden calculations. Now what impressed me even more though wasn't just the projectiles themselves, but everything that happens before a single shot is actually fired. Every soldier follows their own firing sequence instead of a squad behaving like one giant animation. Individual models acquire targets, raise their weapons, aim fire, recover from recoil, continue shooting until their magazine is empty, and then reload. with every one of those stages being tracked independently. So that means each squad no longer behaves like 50 identical soldiers firing in perfect synchronization. Some models will still be aiming while others are already shooting, some are halfway through a reload while others are repositioning, and together it creates firefights that feel much more organic because every soldier is effectively acting as an individual participant rather than one small piece of a larger animation loop. One further detail that really stood out to me was the way that interruptions will be handled, because it's something that most players probably won't consciously notice while they're actually playing, but it changes how responsive combat will feel. If you've ever played older strategy games, you'll know that units can sometimes become locked into animations, meaning that they just simply insist on finishing a firing sequence or completing a reload before responding to your next order. Now that is actually apparently no longer the case here. The developers explain that if the guardsman has only fired 3 rounds from his current magazine, then when you order the squad to move, he doesn't magically complete the reload or reset everything back to the beginning. He immediately stops what he's doing, moves to the new position, and when he's ready to fire again, he continues from exactly where he left off. Every soldier is effectively remembering the current state of their weapon throughout the battle, which is of course an incredible amount of simulation happening underneath the surface. Now of course, with all that detail, it begs the question, are our PCs going to melt? But bear one thing in mind is that this game will be coming out on consoles as well, and so it will all have to be optimized for that too. There's clearly got to be some power under the hood, and I really am kind of curious to see what our system requirements are going to be. What I do know though is that this is only one small but big important topic that was covered in the live stream, and it kind of is the limit for today's video. I will be covering lots of the other topics that were covered, for example the reinforcements mechanics, the weapon swapping situation for certain units, and all sorts of things like that. Bearing that in mind, if you'd like to stay tuned for those videos, make sure you are subscribed and hit the notification bell so that you get a bit of a ding dong when those videos come out. But on that note, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below about today's video, and of course especially about the projectile system in Total War Warhammer 40K. It sounds absolutely insane to me, and I don't quite know how they're going to optimize it all, but I hope they can do a good job. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, take care, and see you next time.